What's up, Taiwan? I'm Eric Gao, and thanks for joining us here for the news. U.S. President Donald Trump's sweeping tax cut and spending bill has narrowly passed the House after days of deliberations. Tiffany Wong takes a look at what it could mean for Americans and for Taiwanese chipmakers.
Republican members of the U.S. House of Representatives celebrate the passage of President Donald Trump's sweeping spending bill.
This is the vote tally card. We're going to frame this one, okay? 218, 214.
The bill's passage completes many of Trump's campaign promises, including extending his 2017 tax cuts. It will put $170 billion toward immigration enforcement. And it also includes a 35% tax credit for chip factories that break ground before the end of 2026. That's a 10% boost from the current tax credit for semiconductor manufacturers under the 2022 CHIPS Act. This could affect Taiwanese chip giant TSMC's $100 billion investment in its American facilities. The bill initially faced some Republican opposition in the House. Among other concerns, it's expected to add around $3 trillion to the country's debt over the next decade. Democrats opposed the bill unanimously and criticized the cuts to Medicaid, which could cause over 11 million Americans to become uninsured in the next decade. Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries tried to delay the vote, delivering a record 8.5-hour speech through the night.
Press on for the American way of life. Press on for democracy. We're going to press on until victory is won. I yield back.
But when the House came to a vote, only 2 Republicans voted against it. And President Trump called his party united in a post on Truth Social. Trump will sign it into law on July 4th, the country's Independence Day.
There could be no better birthday present for America than the phenomenal victory we achieved just hours ago when Congress passed the one big, beautiful bill to make America great again.
But his Republican Party may face more challenges soon. Americans will vote again for Congress in November 2026. And this bill may be a deciding factor for people casting their ballot on whether they feel the cuts were worth the cost. Scott Huang and Tiffany Wong for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's Air Force is saying goodbye to the RF-5E, a fighter jet that has been in service for almost 5 decades. Our reporter Jaime Ocon was at the farewell ceremony in Hualien to see them in action before they retire.
These fighter jets are taking off for the last time. At this base in eastern Hualien, the military is holding a farewell ceremony to honor its RF-5Es, which have been in service for over 50 years. Many people here remember when the aircraft was first delivered, and defense officials say they're an important part of the country's history.
我想，今天是一个历史，我们空军永远是一棒接一棒，强棒出击，守护国家安全是我们空军的责任。
Across from the airbase, military enthusiasts started camping out as early as 5 a.m. to see the aircraft. While the F-5s have been in service since the 1960s, it wasn't until 1973 that they really made their mark here. Under the Tiger Peace Project, Taiwan partnered with the United States to co-produce the F-5E, and more than 300 of the jets were built here through the 1980s. This version, the RF-5E, is mainly used for reconnaissance and takes pictures using special cameras and sensors under the nose of the plane. Pilots here say it's bittersweet, as those kinds of missions with the F-5 are officially done.
心情是非常的兴奋，也非常的紧张，因为其实是最后一批任务，自己知道是最后一批任务，但是还是要战战兢兢、兢兢业业完成这一批，最后要把它圆满达成。
China has been upping its military pressure on Taiwan, with its People's Liberation Army, or PLA, sending hundreds of military aircraft around the country every month. In response, Taiwan has been trying to modernize its armed forces and can now be looking to use newer F-16s to defend the country's airspace, a move analysts say is likely.
It's a sign of the times. I think the threat from the PLA obviously is very different now than when the F-5 was, really a frontline fighter for Taiwan. And I think it's indicative of the fact that both the United States and Taiwan together have recognized that, okay, we need to cooperate where we can to make sure that Taiwan is ready to defend itself against an attack by the PLA.
Most of the pilots here say the airplane is a close part of their identity, but are excited for their next set of missions with a new aircraft.
While it's a bit of a sad day for many here as they say goodbye to their beloved jet, the military is optimistic, and they say that changes like these are needed if they're set to continue handling the threats of today. Ryan Wu and Jaime Ocon in Hualien for TaiwanPlus.
An annual swimming contest between Taiwan's outlying Kinmen Islands and China's coastal city of Xiamen could be canceled this year due to concerns over Chinese influences.
我不会称它是单纯的运动，去那边就是要接受统战洗礼，从厦门游过来，等于是要游过我方的，进入到我方的禁限之水域。对这个事情呢，我们会比较谨慎的处理。
The cross-strait swimming event, now in its 13th year, is organized by China's Xiamen municipal government. It was originally set to take place in late July. The deputy chief of Kinmen County says they will respect the central government's decision, but stresses that the event is not political. The Mainland Affairs Council, which governs relations with China, says it is still looking into the matter, and no final decision has been made yet on whether to call off the event. Tibet's exiled spiritual leader, the Dalai Lama, turns 90 on Sunday. It comes as tensions ramp up between Beijing and one of the world's most influential religious figures on how his successor will be chosen. Izzy Wells has more.
'90th birthday celebrations for the Dalai Lama started early here in Dharamshala in northern India. Particularly significant this year as the Tibetan spiritual leader brings an update about his succession. But as thousands come together to commemorate another year of the Dalai Lama's life, it marks one more year away from his homeland, Tibet. Born Lamo Tondup in 1935 to a family of farmers, he was just 2 years old when he was recognized as the 14th reincarnation of the Dalai Lama, the highest spiritual leader in Tibetan Buddhism, by a Tibetan government search party. In 1940, he was enthroned here in the Potala Palace in Tibet's capital Lhasa and renamed Tenzin Gyatso. But a decade later in 1950, China's new leaders, the Chinese Communist Party, invaded and annexed Tibet, proving an immense political challenge for the 15-year-old. After protests to the international community and initially seeking refuge on the Tibetan-Indian border, the Dalai Lama returned to Lhasa a year later, with Beijing promising Tibet could have regional autonomy and that the Dalai Lama could control internal affairs. He would go on to meet with the founder of the People's Republic of China, Mao Zedong, and the most senior communist leaders. But Chinese treatment of Tibetans deteriorated, and after almost a decade of tensions and fears over the Dalai Lama's safety, a full-scale uprising broke out in 1959, which was violently suppressed. The Dalai Lama was forced to flee, disguised as a soldier, making his way across the border to India, where he was granted asylum. Ever since then, he's lived in this Himalayan town, where he established a government in exile and has dedicated his life to advocating for Tibet and his people. On that journey, he's become one of the world's most recognizable figures, meeting with presidents and religious leaders around the world. And becoming an icon for compassion and peace, receiving the Nobel Peace Prize in 1989. But his influence and popularity have long been a thorn in the side for Beijing. The Chinese government accuses the Dalai Lama of being a separatist, and previous visits to Taiwan have particularly been met with an angry response. Beijing continues to demand the Dalai Lama recognize Tibet and Taiwan as integral parts of China if he ever wishes to return, as well as pressuring international leaders to give him the cold shoulder.
中方反对任何国家政府借涉当问题干涉中国内政，反对任何国家领导人以任何形式会见达赖。
And this pressure from China is forcing the Tibetan Buddhist community to accelerate the timeline of traditions, as the question looms of who will succeed the Dalai Lama after his death, a matter where Beijing claims to hold authority.
Generally, while a Lama is still alive, there won't be any talk about his reincarnation. That talk only comes when that Lama passes away. But in this time, the discussion is coming mainly because the Chinese government is interfering in the reincarnation of His Holiness the Dalai Lama.
The Dalai Lama has previously said his successor will be born outside of China, but there has also been speculation as to whether the lineage would continue. And on Wednesday, he put the rumors to bed, confirming that he will indeed have a successor. The Dalai Lama says that his office, the Gadem Phodrang Trust, has the sole authority to recognize his future reincarnation. But as many Tibetans fear, China continues to reject this, holding on to an imperial-era selection ritual.
达赖喇嘛的转世必须坚持国内寻访、金瓶撤迁、中央政府批准的原则。
As Beijing seeks to tighten its grip on religious practices within its borders, Tibetans around the world fear a successor chosen not by faith, but by force. And as the Dalai Lama nears 90, so too does a turning point, not just for his faith, but the identity and autonomy of an entire people. Kamasu and Izzy Wells for TaiwanPlus.
It is hot here in Taiwan, with temperatures hitting nearly 40 degrees in parts of the country. And doctors are warning that cases of heat stroke are rising. John Van Trieste reports.
It's almost 11 in the morning here in Taipei, and already the temperature is a sultry 35 degrees. By midday, it'll be even hotter. Out here on the streets, people say they're doing the best they can to deal with some of the stickiest days of the year so far.
感觉今年好像有特别热的感觉，然后因为像我以前不太流汗，然后就感觉今年好像特别容易流汗这样子。
我觉得第一个就是要多喝水吧，因为真的其实现在人没有那么喜欢喝水。然后如果真的很常流汗的话，那就是除了喝水之外，还可以喝一点加盐巴的水，会更容易防止中暑。
Though these visitors from Hong Kong say it could always be worse.
香港比较湿一点，就容易出汗，这里也有一点风，所以就挺舒服。
And Friday is actually relatively cool. Thursday saw temperatures in parts of Taiwan, especially in the north, come very close to 40 degrees. This is one of several ongoing heat waves across the northern hemisphere, from Europe to the United States. And while air conditioning is common here, it's still taking a toll. In the first 2 days of July alone, over 100 people sought treatment for what turned out to be heat stroke. At this rate, July will quickly overtake June in terms of people needing emergency medical attention for heat.
大概一天可能5、6件有吧。早上最多当然第一就是老人家可能有时候晚上可能水喝少，然后晚上不开冷气，所以家人发现怎么老人家能全身发烫来，以为他发烧感染，其实很多是中暑。
There is a chance of a typhoon forming near Taiwan soon, bringing wind and rain, and the weather is set to cool down slightly over the weekend. But doctors say it's critical to watch for signs of heat stroke and keep as cool and hydrated as possible until this intense heat breaks. Joseph Wu and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
2 people have been killed in western Turkey as wildfires burn across the country. 200 homes have been destroyed in Izmir province, with 50,000 people forced to flee. Other wildfires have started in forests near Istanbul and in the tourist-heavy Antalya province. Turkey is prone to wildfires in the summer, but some places are not acts of nature. A group called the Children of Fire took credit for multiple arson attacks in several Turkish cities. They claim to have ties with the outlawed Kurdistan Workers' Party, which has not commented. Rescuers in Indonesia are still searching for 29 people missing after a ferry sinking, but search efforts have been delayed by rough seas. The ferry sank Wednesday night in the Bali Strait. 6 people are confirmed dead, while another 30 have been rescued. Some survivors say a leak started in the ferry's engine room and that the boat was overloaded with too many vehicles. Thank you again for watching What's Up Taiwan. Before we go, get ready to have your hearts melted with these images of baby Humboldt penguins at the UK's Chester Zoo. I'm Eric Gao. Take care. See you tomorrow.